if we can take them. If not, we can always transcribe. Well, not transcribe, but we can always do this lesson again if we get more people next time, because Water Girl will probably be able to join, and she's the one that takes really good notes. So in the chat, you should see the link coming up here soon. That's for the Word document. And in the WhatsApp. And the reason why I share these links is because it makes it easier to save the notes whenever there's a change to the document, it automatically saves. So everybody has access to the most recent changes to the document, and it gets versioned and everything. So in case somebody makes a boo-boo and deletes something that they're not supposed to, it's not completely lost. That was weird.
Okay. Share the slides.
I'm working on it.
And yes, Brother Atlani, I will maybe Sunday. If not Monday, I'll go ahead and do that poll every week to see how many people are going to join us. That way we can have a better estimate, and if need be, we can make adjustments to the class time and day.
Class Kamati, no needs in tech, but
And maybe I can even like automate it. I can find out a way to automate it just for now to get a feel for attendance. But I guess we can get started.
All right.
So,
nice. Would you like to start us off? No needs in demo?
sure. Ik not simply stands for orphan. And what is the reason for us getting into this topic? Well, let's get into the concept of what an orphan is. An orphan is somebody who is familyless. You can say they don't have parents to guide them and support them, and they live pretty much on their own. There's an example here on the left side of Enignotzincli. And this transpires because when we come to exist in the physical plane of Mother Earth, the human doesn't really have a parent other than, you know, Mother Earth, but Mother Earth cannot communicate with us the way that a parent can. And so one of the teachings about this is to get us to think about the role that we carry and the role that we hold when we exist in this part of the world. Tekbat, I know you had a really good one.
Oh, well, just to add, so, you know, we have seen that human beings are naturally like social creatures, right? Social people. It's healthy for us to be surrounded by others. Obviously, we take an active role in deciding who we surround ourselves with, right? The healthier, the more positive, the better for our overall well-being. But we are meant to be social, regardless of what others might think of, not liking people, not wanting to interact or communicate with others. But that really does limit and hinder the progress that can be made within a person. Because we learn a lot, right, from our surroundings, from people that we interact with, whether that's good or bad, right, things, but we still learn. And so with the orphan, the concept of an orphan, they are detached, or their connections are kind of severed of establishing a rooted network of individuals that they can learn from, be taught from, develop from. So what you see a lot happening in individuals like orphans is there might be like delays in development. They might not develop certain aspects or skills because they were never shown, they were never given that role model or that example to exemplify. So there's a lot of just lack of development that can happen. So it's important to surround ourselves, right, to establish those support networks. Along the way, we start to figure out how to develop healthy relationships with other people, how to be more mindful of who we let into our space, right? Because we have to be protective but smart, right, of that concept. Brother Atlani?
Tlaso kamati no nitzing tekpat, no nitzing nemo. So they not simply the orphan, right? On this particular image that we're seeing, we see basically the two different examples, the orphan and the family structure, right? One of the things that this is meant to also explain to us is how essentially a lot of our belief systems are impacted at an early age by our families, right? Our families essentially build all these different notions around our belief system based on a lot of different traditions and a lot of different, uh, sometimes cultures. Uh, but it basically changes the way that we perceive the world and the way that we behave towards what's good and what's not, right? The orphan is essentially that spiritual orphan that doesn't really have this uh, track other than what was basically implanted in him to believe by his surroundings, by his family, by society, and by the people around them for the most part. Today we're going to be discussing Koatl, and Koatl is basically is the fifth tonal, and it's important, or in this particular aspect, it's important because a lot of snakes are essentially beings that, for the most part, live alone. They're independent. They, for the most part, will know when somebody's gonna be close to them or come close to them before the person knows that the snake is there. So there is a lot of teachings behind the fact that a snake kind of follows its own path, and it doesn't really follow that family structure or that herd structure the most people follow within society. No needs in Nemo?
Tasogamati, Atlani, and Tekpat. So yes, going back to finishing off what I had originally started, it was that the orphan, as Atlani says, was influenced by the environment around them in the same way that our ancestors were influenced by their environments around them, right? And we see the two different upbringings that exist when two different worlds collided around 1490s, right? And so one was that on the opposite end of the spectrum, although um, destructive in a lot of ways, it also knows how to build and construct, right? And we're talking about the Eurocentric sense, the Eastern Hemisphere idealism, in which their customs are a little extreme and violent. They're very non-conceptually understood from this part of the world, and so it makes it difficult for um, us to accept their teachings and way of existing because uh, of a simple thing called not living in that idealism, right? What we learned on this part of the world, and I'm pretty sure that other indigenous groups also had the exact same notion and concept, was that you live in harmony. And unfortunately for them, on the eastern part of the world, they were exposed to the non-empathetic, non-harmonized way of existing a lot earlier than we were. And so we had to experience that as well. It was one of those things that it was just meant to happen. But you get to see the difference, right? One was rooted in creating individualism, having people believe and think that they need to exist on the individual level and succeed on the individual level versus the opposite side of the spectrum, like in the Western Hemisphere, where it was community focused, right? We focused on working together. We focused on kind of like an what do you call it? Like a ant colony. There you go. Sorry, kind of like an ant colony, right? They all work together and they all provide sustenance, and so the idea of community stems from the, as Tekbat said, human beings having that communal based um what was it called, trait. And so with that being said, you kind of get to see the difference in the worlds that those two groups exist, right? One is perceived as unhappy, incapable of feeling empathy or any type of remorse, given that they were never exposed to that sentiment, right? Everybody always walked around them, didn't provide them any food or change, and whenever it was provided, there was always some snotty remark or some, you know, dehumanizing way of them receiving it. And so, on the opposite end of that, when you have a structure and a support system that is very well um existent, very well like in your face all the time, you get to see the difference. And I know these are pictures, and everybody can fake a smile behind a picture, but these are to represent uh you know that notion. And so here you get to see the children, big smiles on their faces, right? And in this example, you get to see the parents as well, and the way they hug their kids. It's one of those tender moments, one of those things where you you don't if you don't experience this, you don't get to feel this. You feel the opposite of it. And I think that's what exactly is what is happening in today, modern day today, where it just makes it difficult for people to understand emotions because they're not exposed to them. For example, the ideal that a man shouldn't cry, a man should be a man, and they should be taking care of certain things, and you know all these other ideals. Well, they don't get to experience emotional regulation or emotional intelligence. Why? Because they're told from a very young age that that's a woman thing. But
So we have a bunch of unhealthy individuals in society.
yes.
And then it's like a cycle, right? It's like a domino effect. So those individuals that never learned how to emotionally regulate are then passing on those traits and qualities to their kids, because their kids, one of their biggest role models or examples is parents and family. They learn a lot. They're very intuitive, right? They learn from watching and observing. And they start to pick up these habits thinking that it's normal because that's what, is around them. And so it just continues that unhealthy cycle of continuing to have more individuals later on that don't know how to emotionally regulate. And then it's just a non-ending cycle until somebody intervenes and makes that change, right? Either later on in life they learn how to develop those skills of emotionally regulating, either through influence from somebody else or just self-taught, right? Self-knowledge of wanting to improve themselves to the point where they learned how to incorporate those skills. But we are all in control of what we do and how we act, right? And so it's never too late to learn. So just like we have some unhealthy qualities, right? You can learn to let those go, unlearn them, and learn new ones to pass on, right? To be a better influence or a better example. So just wanted to add that little tidbit.
And so just like that, we learned the environment, right? As orphans, some of us grew up without the feeling of empathy while the others did. And so that's why you have those two different constructs and two different ideals, is because although as you get older, you start to understand more things and things make a lot more sense. You get to understand empathy, you get to understand your emotions, but you're a lot older. And unfortunately, the younger generations that you influence in your growing up tend to go that route too. And so in that same manner, when you bring somebody in that construct of support, then they lack some of the qualities that the orphans have that are positive in nature, that are positive in the aspect. So just like we stated before, the concept of good and evil is not really a concept. It was an illusion that was derived so that we can have a sense of fear. And but everything in this world has a dual nature, right? There's if there's quote unquote good, there's quote unquote bad, right? And so bad sometimes can be good because it teaches us to not do too much or we're not doing enough, right? And too much good is also bad because then you have uh, people doing too much good and they're not supplying or providing certain aspects of it, and that system collapses. And so there has to be a balance. There has to be uh, a harmony within those two, kind of like the yin and yang concept, right?
And I just wanted to add real quick, you don't have to be parentless or familyless, if that's even a word, to be an orphan. All right. That is what we typically picture, right? When we talk about an orphan as somebody that doesn't have family or a parent. But the same effect can be felt in individuals that are in families or a support system that is unhealthy or toxic, right? That is neglectful, that doesn't provide those teachings or attention to the children or to the individual, right? So I just wanted to also add that little part of you don't have to experience loss of a family member to be considered an orphan. It could also be the lack of nurturing, the lack of attention and love, right? That you experienced and you, like Nemo had mentioned, right? You navigate this world alone and trying to fend for yourself and have a very individualistic way of thinking because of that. So.
Tehuatzin tikmati tlatitenimitis mitis noso ti te mictis nochi secan motech. You know if you will give life or death. Everything is within you, right? So that is exactly the direction that we're heading towards, right? Is you make the decision of what is it that you want to bring. If you want to bring life or you want to bring death. And so in the notion of the orphan, when you grow up without that support system, well, things can go in a direction you don't want them to, right? In the same way that those who have a support system and you're raising your children in a specific idealism, things can go in a direction you're not hoping for. And the reason for that is because the decision belongs to the individual, and they choose whether they want to bring life or bring death. And so that's the reason why we have those two different idealisms, right? Where the Eurocentric idealism, it's very violent, it's very gory and bloody, and on the opposite spectrum, for indigenous globally, it's a sense of harmony, right? We tend to be more picky when we reproduce, and we tend to be more um, vibrant when it comes to actually providing and sustaining, right? Because we understand the calamities that come with over utilizing resources within nature. And that was because of the practices that were done before. And so it's a decision ultimately that it sits within the self, right? And we can learn to either go with the flow or, not. And so the next sentence, I'm not even sure. Yes, the next phrase, clearly exemplifies that. Welis tipatlanis Juan tikpatis or tipatis tipakis noso timoteltis Juan timolonias. You can fly and be happy or stop and stink. And I've used this example many times of running water that runs. It's clean, it's drinkable, it's potable water. You can bathe in it, right? But when that water stops moving after a certain period of time, it starts to have a scent and it starts to become unhealthy and it starts to become a detriment to the environment around that. And so, in that same essence, if we continue moving, our body stays healthy, our system, our metabolism kicks in and it keeps us healthy, right? When we stop, we tend to start to become unhealthy, right? Like in moments of depression, when you don't move around, you let your thoughts get the best of you and you just lay in bed. Your family suffers because children might not be getting fed, dogs and cats and pets might not be getting fed. Your house gets unclean. And so there's this is that exact notion about constant movement. And so stay constant. Take that.
I wanted to hear actually, Brother Atlani. We can
Yes.
change it up.
Reverse the order.
Yeah, I can change it up. Brother Atlani, go ahead.
Tlazogamati no tekpat tlazogamati nemo. So, if you will give life or death, everything is in you. We are responsible, right? Each individual is responsible for their actions. There's no such thing as good or bad. Everything is action and reaction, and that's essentially the way that the elders used to view this particular issue, right? You are the creator of your own life and responsible of the creation that you make, right? You can either give somebody a compliment or be rude and give them a really bad comment, right? And there will be a reaction to that. And I mean, that's a simple thing that I think all of us have seen in our lives. So it basically goes to show you that everything is within you. You can actually make changes uh, to your surroundings by the way that you behave in the actions that you take. Uh, you can fly and be happy or stop and stink. Koat, the regent for Koat is Chalchihuitle. Chalchihuitle is the female duality for Tlaloc, is the water energy of rivers, waterfalls. When we look at a river, you can clearly see that whenever the river is moving, is basically that what Anointed Nemo explained is basically fluid, clear, clean for the most part, usually if there's no human involvement. Um, and if there's areas within the river where the water stalls, that water becomes putrid, rancid, starts to smell. It's the same concept with humans, right? We have to continue to move. Movement, all in, which is another tonal, is basically what was considered life, right? Movement is essentially what kept everything alive. If you basically just decided to stall, right? Now move, eventually you would die. And that's essentially the teaching behind that. That we need to be in movement all the time, just like water is. When you look at a river has the similarity of a snake. It bends, it basically has this shape of making its own path. Same way as a snake is usually feeling the path that it's going to take and take it. A snake is this being that is basically able to feel all of its surroundings, and essentially be able to make a decision based on that, based on the vibrations it feels with his body. It doesn't use only the senses that we as humans believe we have. It uses its entire body to feel, right? Its nose. So it has a different way of perceiving. I mean, its tongue. So it has a different way of perception. So that's basically what I would say regarding this particular phrases. No anything like that?
Mati. Yeah, so just to add to the really good, insight from both of you. Yeah, that first phrase, right? It's up to us. We have the control, right, to direct the course and direction of what we decide to act on and what we decide not to act on. A lot of the time, one of the like a very common saying that goes around, and it's a very toxic, a very unhealthy way of or approach, right, is when people who are very religious, right, they offset the responsibility and that active role, they place it onto a higher being, right? This concept for them of a god that will handle everything. It's up to them, right? You hear a lot of people say the notion, well, it's whatever, God deems it to be. He's the one to decide. By releasing that power, right? That individual power that lies within all of us, you're pretty much taking away, right? Your own self-empowerment, your ability to make decisions. And so that is something, I guess, I would deem like a side effect of practicing religion is you don't learn, or you're not taught how to empower yourself, right? As an individual, as a person, you're not made aware that you are actually sacred energy, right? You have a role to play in the universe. You're interconnected with all of nature, and you lose sight of all that inside information because they need you to be constricted in a box, not go outside the barriers of that box, not question outside of those teachings. And so we lose a lot of self-empowerment, the ability to think for ourselves and control our course of life, because we place that responsibility into the hands of somebody else, right, to handle it. And so I just wanted to add that. Yeah, and then the second part, right? We decide how we choose to live our life, right? We talk about Ashkanawanikan, right? To live in the here and now, to be present, to not dwell and linger in the past, because we cannot change. I mean, we don't have a time machine and we can't go back and change. And even if we wanted to change those things, it would alter, right, the course of our life. We wouldn't be the individuals we are currently. We wouldn't have gone through those lessons and teachings that we might have needed to have gone through, right? Even though they might be tough and painful, right? Some of those memories or those teachings, but we did learn, right? And we learned how to strengthen and overcome, which are important in life. Our ancestors thought, in every experience, there's a teaching, there's a lesson. It's not out of sheer coincidence that it happens, right? So we have to kind of alter our mindset a little bit, change it, and see it more as a positive experience, right? Even though it might not be positive, but know that there's something to gain from it, something to learn, something to grow from, right? It shapes us of who we are. A lot of people like to say, I wish I could have started earlier. I wish I could have gotten my interest in learning this earlier in life, right? Especially a lot of us that are a little bit older. But by saying that, we're we're missing out on the lesson. And the lesson behind that is everything has its moment, everything has its place in time. There's a reason, right? We didn't learn at a younger age. We had to go through challenges and obstacles and just live life, right? To end up being transformed into the individuals that we are, right, in the present day. So, so yeah, we decide we're in control of how we want to live life. Do we want to live it to the fullest and not have any regrets, right? Once our time our time comes, or do we want to be full of odor and stink and just infect, right, our surroundings and other people in a negative manner? But we decide that, right? And I think we can all tell from experience, right? If we're constantly moving, we're constantly growing, we're constantly doing something, right? And we're in movement, not just physically, but mentally. That does us a lot of good, right? That like allows us to grow within ourselves, to have a better outlook on life because we are changing the way that we're viewing ourselves, right? We're taking care of ourselves, which is important. A lot of people just get really busy, get really tired, get very just done to a point where they stop investing time for the self, right? To taking care of it. We have to take care of our homes, right? We learned in a few weeks ago with the lesson about the house, right? Our body is part of that house. It's our protection, it's our foundation. We have to nurture and take care of it, right? So that we can thrive and continue. So we decide that, right? If we want to spread good medicine around or if we want to just be those negative Nancy's that just complain and just that's all we do, right, in our daily. So, knock me one.
The next slide, no need Evo.
Xicpatla motlacayo one moyol tonal. Change your body and your spirit. So we're going to get into some pretty cool phrases or sentences here. Tlayetia no me milis, shikil namiki, welis, tikpatlas nochi. Xinetnemi ken atl amo ximotelti, xikin makawa motlanemiliskayowan. Tlamachnemiliskayowan masewalti. Did you want to do the translations?
If your life becomes heavy, remember that you can change everything. Walk like water. Walk like water. Do not stop. Detach from situations, objects, and even people.
So what essentially is trying to let us know, or these phrases, what they're trying to let us know, and what our ancestors well understood was that you get to dictate the outcome of your life, right? I don't know if you've experienced moments where you've had a goal, like I'm gonna save some money so I can go on a specific trip, and you successfully save that money and you get to go on the trip, right? During some moments that you were saving money, something may have come up and you had to use that money, so it may have extended the time that you were going to take that trip. But regardless, you make the trip because you stay disciplined and you stay focused, right? And in that same manner, we tend to also exist in the opposite spectrum where something happens and we had to use that money for an emergency, and then that's it. No more trip, and your whole demeanor gets changed and things get sour for you because you just don't see the positive coming out of all of that. And so um, essentially, you are the one dictating the outcome of all of that. Yes, we also have to understand that shit happens, things happen, right? There are obstacles that come our way, and we tend to have like an affinity or an attachment towards certain things. And so one of the biggest examples, and I know that Obsidian Tongue is not here, she was telling us is that she's doing the exercises of carrying rocks. And the rocks are those reminders of the burdens we carry with us, right? You may not remember them, but they're always there. And they come up in the most inopportune moments. For example, when you have the rocks in your pocket and you're laying down in bed and you're comfortable, and then you fall asleep and you get woken up because you rolled on the side of where your rocks are in that pocket and they're uncomfortable. And so it snaps you out of that restful sleep, and it gets you in a mood because you were sleeping and you got woken up. Well, those burdens are in that same shape or form. They're with us because we tend to kind of attach ourselves to it. And we don't know, I mean, we do know how to separate ourselves and let go. We just refuse to do so because we tell ourselves, I don't know how. But that's a very common excuse we use, given that we we don't want to get out of certain situations because we refuse to see the opposite uh, ending towards that story. And so um, Sister Obsidian Tongue says that she is now getting attached to those rocks. And so we must learn to detach from that, right? And that's also another exercise that this it's another teaching this exercise is giving her, is you're gonna have to learn to detach yourself, because eventually the purpose of you carrying those rocks is you're gonna set an intention to each one that you're carrying, and you're gonna return it back to the earth, right? Through burial, through release, or whatever she feels within her body to tell her, right? But you're gonna have to let that go. And so the most important aspect of all of this is to get us into that uncomfortable feeling of detaching. And so I know it was a long-winded way of explaining it, but um, Brother Tlani?
Tlazokamati no nixin. Um, Change your body and your spirit. If your life becomes heavy, remember that you can change everything. That's basically one of the things that the butterfly, which is showing there in the picture, is teaching us, right? A butterfly goes through a life cycle to become as beautiful as a butterfly is. It goes through all of these changes, starting as a larva, starting as an egg, right, and then moving on to do a complete life cycle, changing itself in the process many times. Is basically the same concept that we're looking to do, right? We're looking to change certain things about us that we may not like, things that keep us from moving forward, things that keep us from becoming better people, possibly better. I don't know, sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, you name it, right? It basically keeps us from being better at whatever you want to call it, whether it's even your job, right? Um, Walk like water, do not stop. Water never stops unless it's frozen. For the most part, water is always going to be moving. And it's that concept also, right? That you can never stop on changing. Every single day, we should be basically a better version of what we were the day before, right? By learning something new, by always trying to implement something that is going to make us be more complete as who we are intended to be, right? Detach from situations, objects, and even people. This is quite important because I think that a lot of us understand the concept that there's a lot of things that hold us back, whether it's a particular situation like a job that keeps us unhappy, uh, a particular object like a car payment that got way too expensive, and then you lose sleep over it. It's a material thing that is just basically keeping you stressed out, or even people, right? There's a lot of times where we're around people that are not the most positive people, and they tend to take energy away from us, just basically by comments they make, whether they're directed towards us or in general, right? These people are sometimes people within our own family, uh, and it sounds extremely cruel, uh, but sometimes these are people that we have to unfortunately put some distance between us and themselves, because of the fact that they are not the best thing for us. Same thing, of course, with everything else, situations, objects. I think that all of us have these perceptions, these different feelings, right? When we're dealing with situations, places, or people where we have this feeling that tells us that something is not right, right? I think that one of the things that we learn from the snake is that the fact that we have to essentially start listening to that intuition, to ourselves, and start basically implementing a lot of these different changes uh, that are going to make us become better in anything we want to apply it to. Tlaxoca Matimiek, no initzin?
Exactly. And so,
Yeah, so taking all the words. Anyways, no, I mean, there's plenty more we can talk about, right? So, yeah, I mean, I like what you both have mentioned about we're in control, right? The power lies within us to decide what we do with it, right? Um, we can change anything we, set those intentions on. And I mean, we're energy ourselves, so it is possible, right, to manifest outcomes. You just have to uh put the work in, right? It doesn't come free. It doesn't just get thrown or placed in your lap miraculously. You do have to put the effort, right, to put the work in to make that change. um I did want to add the water part, right? The reason Koat, the sacred energy of Koat, is associated with water is because just like rivers, right? When you put rocks, Temachtilli uses this example of when you see rocks on a riverbend, right? The water doesn't just stop, right? It doesn't just, nope, I've been halted. I can't do anything from this point forward. If anything, the water finds a way to get around it, right? And that's to display the example that there is no obstacle that should completely shut down a person from making progress, moving forward. Yes, they come in different shapes and sizes, the challenges that we are, given, but we as a human being, we have to take on those challenges. We have, in order to grow and change, right? We have to figure out a different way of thinking of of a solution to that problem, right? It might not always be a direct path, right? It can wind just like rivers, just like the snake, right? When it moves. And so he uses that metaphor to remind us as individuals, as people, that you shouldn't stop your progress in any shape or form just because it gets hard, just because something gets placed in front of you that you were not expecting. You just have to figure out a tactful way to get around it, right? In everything, there's a teaching, there's a lesson, there's something to grow from it. It's not meant to overwhelm your system to the point where you shut down and you give up and you never address it, right? And that's what is becoming very common in our society, is people giving up, people not realizing their value and their worth and their capabilities. And when things get really tough, they shut down their body, their mind, their soul, their spirit, and they just give up, right? They stop caring, they stop taking care of themselves, they distract themselves with something else to not to not think about the original thought, or things of that nature. So just like rivers, just like moving water, because moving water is very powerful, it's very strong. We have to remind ourselves that we are like that as well, right? We shouldn't limit ourselves, because by having a very limited mentality of, oh, I can't do this, or making statements like, I'm just not smart enough to figure it out, I'm not strong enough to overcome this. Words are very impactful, they mean a lot, right? So we must be wise and careful how we speak, right? Because you will place those limitations on yourself before even starting. And so, yeah, keep moving, keep keep flowing. And then the last part, it's really important. It's one of the teachings that comes with Goa, right? Of learning to detach materialistic attachments, especially, they shouldn't be of high priority or high value in our life, right? We can't take those things once we leave this face of the earth, right? It's not going to come with us. We develop a lot of unhealthy habits of holding on to stuff longer than we need to, not wanting to share things or provide or gift it to somebody that might need it, right? Because of our emotional attachment to it. And so, just like the rocks, that exercise, right? Just like it's teaching you to let go of the burdens, right? It's exemplifying that teaching. You have to let go, right? You have to let go of situations that do not help, that do more harm than good, right? Letting go of objects, not getting, emotionally attached to materialistic objects that, they're not going to be around forever. And then really important is letting go of people. It's okay to not still maintain the same relationships with individuals that, vary in time that you've known them, right? A lot of us don't want to let go of those childhood individuals because of the amount of years that have passed by, the level of interaction and involvement that we have put, right? But lessons teach us along the way that those individuals, some of them aren't meant to still be around. They might be harming us emotionally, physically, mentally, right? It's okay to let those relationships go, because we always have the ability to form new ones, right? To form healthier ones. And that goes really, that's an important thing to consider, especially with family members. People don't want to let go of unhealthy relationships with their family because they are made to believe that family is thick, and that relationship is thick. You have to survive and get through it no matter what. You maintain that relationship no matter what happens or what harm it brings, because they're family. Just very unhealthy ways of, of keeping the cycle going, right? But regardless of their family, friends, acquaintances, right? Just learn to let go of the people that do not bring any health or benefit into your life, right? Take care of your surroundings, your environment. And so with that, some relationships have to go. And it's not for you to feel guilty or hold it against yourself or judge yourself harshly because, you're taking that step forward of letting them go. And don't get yourself manipulated to come back, right? To reestablish or to stay. Um, Manipulation is a very sneaky, a very interesting way of guilting somebody, right? Making them believe things that are untrue and then having them stay or continue to be harmed and hurt, right? So just know when it's time to let go of objects, people, or situations.
So, like Koatl, right? There's going to be a moment in time where you must grow, right? And this is essentially all the steps that you're being taught in growing. So when a snake grows, what does it do? It sheds its skin, right? So in that same manner, you must shed your metaphorical skin because you have to grow. If you stop growing, then what's going to end up happening? Well, there's a part of you that ends up dying because it lacks the space that it needs to grow. Whether that could be creativity, the ability to have confidence, I mean, there's a plethora of things, right? But you must learn to shed that skin in order for you to, grow, because you just got to let it go and you just got to stay back. Another important thing about the snake is, I mean, the association between snake and water is if you fly, if you're in an airplane and you look down where areas where there are rivers, you see them meandering a lot, and it looks like a snake, and it resembles a snake. And so, um, just like the river doesn't stop, doesn't matter what obstacle gets put in front of it, it finds a way to meander around it and do certain things, right? The snake does the same thing. When the snake comes across an obstacle that prevents it from moving forward, it'll either find a way to go over it or around it. And so, um, we must learn to do that, right? And so, Brother Atlani, you want to take care of the next slide?
Sure, Tlazokamati. Skills to be developed. Perceive the world through vibration. Use intuition and feeling to relate to the environment. The serpent also represents the movement of water. Ko and Atl. The serpent can be medicine or poison. So perceive the world through vibration. The snake is essentially extremely connected to Mother Earth, right? Because of the fact that he's essentially all the time in contact, in touch with Mother Earth, is basically believed to have all of these different attributes. They allow for it to feel the world through vibration, basically, right? And that is essentially one of the things that we were gonna try to teach ourselves. Being able to use our intuition and feelings to relate to the environment, right? And that goes back to one of the things that I was mentioning earlier, that sometimes our feelings, our intuition, especially with women, women have amazing intuition. Um, it tells us different things, right? Things that are going to happen, things that they might seem a little weird. That's essentially the skills that we are going to try to learn from the snakes. The serpent also represents the movement of water, just like Noinitsin Nemo just explained. If you look at a river from a high point, you will notice how it kind of looks similar to that of the body of a snake in movement. Uh, the word itself, Koatl. Uh, Ko is basically for place, right? A particular location. Uh, Atl is water. So the translation is the place of water, right? And that goes back to how is extremely related to water. Uh, the serpent can be medicine or poison, both, right? The meat used to be eaten by the elders for multiple different illnesses. I still recall my grandma would talk about how the rattlesnake meat was really good for uh, joint problems, right? Different forms of arthritis and different health issues, right? It also was something that they used to clear or cleanse the blood. So it had these medical attributes, but it was also known, obviously, for its poison, right? If a rattlesnake bit you, it wasn't a beautiful thing to have happened to you. So all of these are skills that we will be able to learn from this particular tonal. No, Nitin?
I mean, well said, well elaborated on. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much else. You did really well. We can move on to the next slide if you want.
So again, these are skills, right, that we have to take time to develop, and it will take time because it's something that we have not been exposed to. Unless you've been doing this for quite some time, then you'll understand what we are referring to, right? And you also must remember to take note of the moments in which you do. That way you can not forget that feeling, and you might build on that and make your skills stronger, right? And so we understand that the world is based off of vibrations, and those vibrations are measured with instruments nowadays as either frequencies, waves, particles, whatever you want to call it, right? The notion that everything is a vibration is just that. If if you put a cell under a microscope, you get to see what it's composed of. But when you put it under one of those super microscopes, you tend to see the atoms that that make up that cell, and those atoms are in constant motion. It's not things that are just stagnant staying there. And so that motion that they create is a vibration. That's why babies have the ability to, since they're brand new to this environment, they're brand new to everything around them, they have a better sense of understanding frequencies and vibrations, and they can feel a bad vibration from a certain human being just by being held by that individual, and you'll notice their demeanor changes, right? Their whole demeanor, they cry like they don't want to be held by that person. Why? Because they know that's not mom, they know that's not dad. And if it's somebody with evil intention, they can definitely feel that in the same way that plants can feel our intention, right? When you take tools out to go garden, or you take your lawnmower out to go cut the grass, there's scientific evidence now that exists today that shows that the grass stresses out, or the plants stress out, because you're going to go out there to cause a change to them. You're going to either cut the grass, or you're going to prune some of the branches off of the plant. Why? Because you're trying to make it grow bigger and better, right? And so the vibrations and everything around us are just exactly that. It's to get us to understand um, the world around us, and we definitely can. Like what?
To fly and flutter in the air. So it's important to always flow toward our goals. Develop intuition through observation and silence. Shed the heavy skin to walk and fly lightly. Habits, emotions, feelings, situations, people, objects. And build a new spiritual vision. So these are things that, as we're growing, as we're learning, right, we should start incorporating more into our course of life, right, of this journey that we are on. So it's for the first one, right, it's always good to keep moving forward, keep going in the direction of what you're trying to achieve goal-wise, right? Set goals for yourself. It's very important to have goals. A person without goals, you can see the difference versus somebody that's motivated and inspired and has things that they're working towards, right? So set those goals for yourself and take responsibility to keep yourself on that path of achieving those. And so one of the first things we learned with Sipakli, right, the first energy, was to learn through observation and being quiet, right? Sitting in silence without judgment, taking in the information, the surroundings, and learning from it. That is how we're going to grow to develop our skills of intuition, of learning that which is surrounding us. I mentioned it, already with we are interconnected in this universe. We just have to strengthen those connections, those networks, right, that flow all around us. And the only way we can do so is by learning our environment, our surroundings. And we must be quiet and silent and observe and take in the information that is being provided to us, but we may not know how to take it in or to interpret it at this point in time, right? Something to work towards. And then, as we spoke previously, right, to let go, to shed the heavy skin, those unhealthy habits, emotions, feelings, people, situations, and objects. Let those things go. It's something that you work towards. Just like with anything, you want to maintain a balance in your life. You don't want to do too much. You don't want to exceed the balance within you, right? So I like to say, take small steps towards your goal, right? Towards that progress, and and slowly add to it, right? Don't overwhelm yourself and just completely decide I'm gonna just get rid of everything, all my possessions. There are things that you still need, right? In order to especially live in this capitalistic environment, right? So just be mindful, be smart of how and what you're letting go of, right? There's always a time and place for it. And then we are working towards building that new spiritual vision, right? We aspire to be a Nawal, right? Someday. A Nawal is an individual that has achieved that higher level of consciousness, right? Of knowledge and wisdom, that can understand their environment and their surroundings, on a different level, on a more advanced level. That's what we're aspiring to do, right? With our spirituality, to be more knowledgeable, to take in those teachings and learn from them, and to grow into that better version that we're striving for. So, Nemo?
If we pay attention to, we're going back to the butterfly now. If we pay attention to the butterfly, we get to perceive its flight path, right? Its flight path is not that of a bird. It's not straight. It's not forward. It is constant, right? But it's not in a what some people will consider it organized way. It's a very chaotic, free-flowing flight pattern. And Temachtilli told us, like, la mariposa vuela como le da la gana. That means that the butterfly likes to fly in its own way, like in its reckless, careless own way. It doesn't, you'll see it, begin its path of flight, and while it's flying, it'll go left, right, up, down. It'll come back and then move forward. And I mean, it's in that same essence. You also must learn to exist in that chaotic beautifulness, right? Because if you live your life of constant organization and constantly following certain things, then you cannot develop that notion of intuition. And the reason why is because you limit and constrict the creativity side of you to be able to do so. And so one understands that a creative mind is one that doesn't live within the constructs, within the edges or the lines of that box, right? For a creative mind, a box is it can mean a whole lot of different things, right? They can turn that box into a beautiful design or a beautiful artwork or a beautiful piece of of paintings and things like that, or that box can become an instrument for them, or for those that are more on the physical nature, that box can become a tool for you to use to improve your skating skills or to improve your agility and you strengthen the muscles in your legs. So there's a beautifulness to chaos, right? Why? Because chaos itself finds a way to harmonize and balance. It's not just chaos and that's nothing but the only existence, right? Within chaos, there is still organization and structure. And so, um, yeah, it's just to get us to understand that as a butterfly flies, you must also move, right? You can't go on a straight path because eventually you're going to come in an obstacle and that path no longer is straight. You have to deviate from it. And that deviation causes a lot of people that fear of the unknown, fear of not knowing or not, they didn't plan for it or whatever. And so they change courses, go back in a straight line, and going back is very detrimental. It's very detrimental. Why? Because it's not helpful. It's not beneficial. It's not good to go back and you know because you're gonna end up going back to old habits and old things that are just not good for you. It's just better to keep moving forward and finding a way to get around that. Right, Lenny?
Tlazokamati, no, Nitzin. So always flow toward our goal. Develop intuition through observation and silence. Shed the heavy skin to walk and fly high lightly. Build a new spiritual vision. So even if you slow down a little bit, we should always be moving to our goals, right? You can pause for a little bit, but you should never be stuck. I mean, you will always need a break from anything. We're not robotic. We're humans. And there's times or days where you need some personal time and you need to relax and you need to have maybe a lazy day, maybe I don't know, watch movies, go to the store, do some shopping, you name it, right? You need those times to just be a human. But you should always go back to trying to learn and better yourself all the time after that. And it cannot be a constant state of, yeah, I'm going to do me. I'm going to do whatever makes me feel good at the time, rather than preparing myself for where I want to be, right? I mean, uh, if your goal is to win the lotto, maybe you should get out of the couch and go and buy a lotto ticket at least, right? So work towards your goal, whatever that goal may be. Put a little work into it. Develop intuition through observation and silence. Most of the time, if you just pay attention to a person that is speaking, you will basically notice a lot of the stuff that they're basically saying without having to say it, right? Without the actual words. A lot of people make a lot of gestures, and a lot of that kind of stuff goes unnoticed because a lot of times we don't pay attention to each other. We don't pay attention to our surroundings or the people around us that are even talking to us at times. Shed the heavy skin and walk and fly lightly, right? There's no reason why we should be carrying baggage from our childhood, from our, first boyfriend or girlfriend, or anything that happened to us in the past. It happened, it basically had an effect, but we need to basically put that back where it belongs, and we don't need to allow for that kind of stuff to basically hinder our growth. Uh, it is something that has to be shed, just like a snake would shed. It's the skin to grow. We have to do the same thing. It's the same concept. Build a new spiritual vision. The snake for the Western world, for most of the world, I would say Abrahamic religions, it has this connotation of evil, right? Is linked to the devil, right, in a lot of different ways. Yet, for a lot of different cultures, including the Anawak, it had this connotation of medicine, earth, change, fertility. So it has the complete opposite meaning in a lot of different ways uh, than the Abrahamic religions do, right? So what this basically tells us is that there's a lot of information out there when it comes to a lot of these different things, right? Uh, we need to teach ourselves as much as we can, learn as much as we can from as much as we can, right? Everywhere we can. And in doing so, we got to be able to build a new spiritual vision, right? Of what it is that is our truth, our own niltilistli. There's this word that basically means your own truth, right? Uh, my truth is different than each one of you guys, and the reason why it's different is because I have my own perception, and my perception allows for me to basically decipher my life in a way that even if we're in the same room, you guys seeing the same thing, you guys will see something different, right? So uh, it's basically that building your own truth to the point that you're not believing something that somebody else should be telling you that you have to believe. All of these, the word learning is the learning is done via practice, right? And you choose to either practice it or not practice it. You choose to do the exercises or not do them. The only thing that you have to lose is basically that you didn't. You don't lose anything if you don't do it other than the experience, right? uh, but in doing the exercises, you're basically teaching yourself your own truth, right? Nobody else is gonna have to explain to you what an exercise feels like because you did it. Nobody else is gonna be able to explain to you what you should think because you did it, right? So it's this idea of teaching yourself and not telling somebody else, tell you basically what to think. No, anything?
And these are steps, that'll take us eventually to letting go, right? And so there's an exercise that we must follow. Well, not must follow, but there's an exercise that we should follow and we should put into practice so that we can get into that next phase of the tonal, right? And I don't know if you've noticed already, the progression of the tonal and the way that we're going about it builds off of the previous exercise, right? So um, if you already done Kali, then you understand why you did that and the reason why we're going forward into this next one, right? And so it's important for us to learn that detachment. That's like the most crucial one. And so you must learn to detach from a very, very valuable object without saying anything to the person that you're giving it to, right? It must be just something like, the biggest example that I have is when we first started this whole reclamation journey. We started with the mentor, and his name is Kochimiki, right? Sleeping Wolf. And during that time, they were going through some hardships, and unfortunately, they couldn't afford a new phone. And anyways, we gave them a phone. We gave them an extra phone that we had, and they were they were not expecting it, right? And so um same thing with your cousin, but your cousin needed a phone because of the situation they were in, and we provided them a phone, right? um it's the actions of removing yourself from certain things, right? One, to teach yourself the limits that you carry, The biggest example that I can provide that just happened recently is with Temachtilli, our teacher. There was a search, a military search happening, and whenever you hear that in Mexico, it's not a good thing. They're either trying to extort the people, they're either trying to put fear within the people, right? And so, if you don't have money, they'll take your shoes, right? If you don't have money and or shoes, they'll take your car. If you don't have the money to give to them, they will take something with the excuse that they have to, because they're doing this search for certain things and bad people or whatever. They'll take your laptop. So that's what ended up happening with him. They took his laptop, his device, and he couldn't do his teachings how he would want to. He couldn't record things, and everything, all the work that he had done was on that laptop. And so, um, me being a tech person and having an extra laptop that I invested a lot of time and energy and money into it, I saw it as an opportunity for me to just do something and help them out. And it was very difficult for me because that was a laptop that, I mean, I had done upgrades to it and all these things, and so um, I didn't want to let it go. And when I couldn't send the laptop directly to the teacher because of the cost of shipping and everything, a little part of me was kind of relieved. But then the opportunity came for us to actually deliver it, and so um, I I was saddened, but I did not hesitate to move forward with giving it away. And so Brother Atlani provided us an opportunity to give the device to Temachtilli, and now he's capable of continuing on with the teachings and the lessons, and being able to store the items within that device. And I'm hoping that with time, I'm able to travel there and show him the technology that's on the device and how he can use it. So that way, if the device gets damaged, if the device gets taken, for whatever reason, the information within it is not lost. It's stored in the cloud and he's able to access it from, wherever. And so it gets rid of the negative feelings, right? That feeling of attachment. It stops that stops us from being ourselves. And so in letting go of that device and letting go of those certain things that I had, I'm no longer, worrying about, oh, they're not being used. Oh, they're just sitting there. Oh, they were supposed to be used for something else, but now look at them just being wasted or whatever excuse, right? I no longer have those burdens to carry along with me, right? It's also good for us to offer a special energy to somebody. It doesn't matter what you may be feeling, whether it's you're too tired or you're too whatever excuse that comes along with it, right? It's always great to give a special energy to somebody. And what do we mean by this? Well, it can be, for example, the teachings of Tonatiuh, right? Tonatiuh, or it can be the teachings of uh, Xiuhtecutli or um, Citlatlique, right? Metzli or whatever energy that you think, or within energy from yourself. You can always give energy. Just remember to protect yourself and know your limits of how much energy you can give, right? Make sure that when you do these things, you keep a record of them, right? So that way you can watch your growth and you can see what has been eliminated, whether it's physically, spiritually, emotionally, and how it helped you grow. And I think I went a pretty long-winded way of explaining it. Tech Bud, would you like to add some more?
Um, I mean, you did. I mean, the only thing I can add, right, is just to continue to repeat and reiterate and hopefully get it ingrained, right, in each of us that it's important to detach. That's one of the teachings behind Koatl, right, is to shed. shed the things that no longer pertain to us, no longer, help us in any shape or form. And so, yes, doing things, make gestures, right? That selflessly, right? You gift somebody, whether that be a physical object or energy, right? Um, and then the second one, right? The eliminating negative feelings that stop us from being ourselves. We are our biggest critic, judge, punisher. We like to torture ourselves a lot of the time and make ourselves feel bad, right? So we have to get rid of that thought process, that habit. Just start, what is it called? Spring cleaning ourselves of removing all that negative energy that's been stored and pent up in ourselves, right? Let it go, release it in a healthy way, right? And just no longer hold on to those things. We need to stop limiting ourselves and placing constraints by saying, right, by manifesting things, by telling ourselves that, oh, we're not good enough to, accomplish this. We're not smart enough, whatever excuse or whatever saying we like to tell ourselves, right? But that needs to stop, right? That needs to be put to a stop, and we need to manifest and encourage more positive feelings, right? More motivation and encouragement, and just love for ourselves, because we can't do anything if we ourselves are nearly empty, right? So taking care of ourselves, providing that love towards ourselves, and then, we can spread that love and energy to other people. That's kind of the goal. And then, yeah, it's just important to keep track, to record what we're detaching from, what we're letting go. Like Brother Nemo has said, right, of reflecting back and seeing the progress that we have made, the steps that we have taken to achieve our goals. This growing, right, the growing journey that we have embarked on, it's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be simplistic in its nature. We're going to be provided with a lot of teachings and information in very unexpected ways, right? As was mentioned earlier, we get caught off guard, and sometimes we really just get thrown for a loop whenever we get presented something that we just weren't expecting, or it's done in a way that just throws us off course. But we have to remind ourselves that things aren't linear, right? Things like the movement of the butterfly, it's random. It's however it dictates it to be. And so the same thing with the teachings, it's going to come at us in different ways and maybe in different modes of communication. And the point is not to get frustrated, overwhelmed, and just give up because it's too hard, right? We have to learn how to decipher the information, how to take in the teachings, and not shy away from a challenge, right? And just, I guess, give back more of that empowerment to ourselves, give us more credit than we probably give ourselves, and just move toward those goals. Noknitin, Atlani?
No, I think the detaching or doing these exercises for the first one, detaching from a very valuable object without saying to whom to give it, right? That is one of the exercises that I try to practice as much as I can. So what does that do? It doesn't have to be, by the way, a valuable object, okay? It works better if it's something that you hold dear and it has almost no value, right? No monetary value, no uh, high price attached to it. So essentially, find an item like that that you have, that you hold a lot of love or attachment to. Could be like a little necklace. That's basically what I did. Uh, or little things like that. Key rings that might mean something to you. Anything, right? And just give it away to somebody or something. It doesn't have to be a person. You can do it to a river, to a lake, anything, right? The idea is that you are essentially doing that exercise of detachment, right? It's gonna hurt a lot because most of us have grown attached to a lot of different things, but that attachment really keeps us from being free, right? The more attached we are to things, the less free we are. The more things that we have, that we own, uh, the less free we are. These things hold us. Uh, and for the most part, we can live a life, a fairly good life without most things that we have. So that's one of the things that we have to practice, detaching from material things when we are told that you can buy a house, you can buy land, you can buy a car, all of these are material things that really we're not taking with us when we transcend to a different state. Uh, so this idea that we can own land, we can own water, air, there's no such thing. We have limitations as far as what we actually own. We are part of Mother Earth. We belong to it. It doesn't belong to us. Uh, so that's what I would say about detachment, which I think is an extremely important exercise to apply. Uh, Same thing with eliminating negative feelings, right? They stop us from being ourselves. Uh, Offer a special energy to a special person. Record what has been eliminated physically, spiritually, and emotionally. uh, Eliminating negative feelings is important because, again, we don't have to carry any of these things with us. We can share them like a snake does. Offering a special energy to a person, right? You can go and give a gift to somebody, and it doesn't have to be an expensive gift, but little gifts make a huge impact on other people, especially when they're given from the heart. I hold some gifts that have been given to me by multiple different people that I hold a lot of, they hold a lot of sentimental value. Some of these things may not be worth more than $5, but these are things that I have a lot of attachment to just because they were given to me as presents from the heart, right? Uh, Record what has been eliminated physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Write down everything that you can, and again, you can go ahead and do an offering to Mother Earth or Grandfather Fire, right? To basically uh, release all of these different feelings or emotions they keep us from reaching who we should be reaching. That Quetzalcoatl, the balance, right? This is the Coat, this is the snake. The Quetzal is the spirit. So we need both to be able to find the balance. We need the Coat, but we also need that spiritual balance. We also need to reach that state of nirvana, the some call it, right, mentally, where we control our own emotions, our own um, that Pat was talking about. So yeah, that's what I would say about this, Noinitsin.
And so the exercises are meant to help us eventually get to that ultimate goal, which is, as both Tekpat and Brother Tony have said, is to become that Nahual, right? The person who essentially embodies physically what our other you is, right? Because our other you is that higher level, that, excuse me, that ethereal existence that we are trying to attain. And so being a Nawaz will be something to reflect literally that part of ourselves in just every single aspect. And they'll be able to communicate effectively with everything around them. And so it's a cyclical thing for us to understand, right? It something that is not meant to last forever. So the emotions that we currently feel, they're not meant to last forever. That happiness that you are feeling today is not going to be there tomorrow, right? It may be there tomorrow, but it's not going to be there for Saturday. There may be something that, takes away that happiness you felt when you first woke up, and it can be something as like spilling coffee on your dress, or uh, you know, I don't know. There's more examples to give, but it's very easy for us to get out of those emotions, right? And so um, we must remember that we must renew that emotion of happiness, right? Because everything is essentially energy and is in constant renewal, right? Be a warrior of life with a purpose. Don't just be a warrior of life and not have a purpose, because eventually you're going to stop being a warrior, given that you don't have a goal to aspire to, or a uh, a thing to reach, right? And so must understand that the tangible and the intangible are always in constant vibration. So this is the reason why we must take the time to build our intuition and learn to perceive everything as a vibration, because everything that is physically and everything that is not physically or physical is in constant vibration. Don't believe me? Well, can you perceive waves? No. Can you perceive air? No. You can feel it. Yes, that's a vibration. Why? Because the hairs on our skin feel that vibration, that constant change, and then it translates into our nervous system, and that signal gets sent to our brain to understand that there's wind, right? Flourish in all areas and all walks of life, not just in one thing, right? Do it for everything. Be a very good, be a very well-rounded person who understands the difference between when to apply certain things and when to use bad things to apply it to make good things happen, right? So flow freely. Obstacles are in the mind and in the heart, right? Sometimes people tell you follow your heart and not your mind. Well, your heart can actually have obstacles. You might care too much, or you might not care enough, right? In that same instance, we must also understand that the universe is abundant. Like, there's plenty for everyone. There's more than enough for everyone. There is um, I mean, even when we talk about money, there is sufficient money out there, right? Money is also energy. There is sufficient money out there to fix all the freaking problems of the world. But what is the issue that is preventing us from doing all that? It's the fact that we live in this individualistic, kind of selfish nature. These exercises are meant to break us from that, right? And so the example that I can give, or that is given to us for that exact notion, is this snake, right? This snake represents the cyclical nature of things, right? You see the beginning, right, in the head, and then the flow of the body around in this direction, and then ending with its tail, right? But the tail is closely related and attached to the head. And you see it in this constant flow of, whenever there is an ending, there is a beginning. And all of this embodies the you, the warrior, right? The warrior is a constant motion, constant um, growth, right? development of their skills, development of their body, development of their mind. And we're not speaking about the Eurocentric warrior, we're speaking of the indigenous warrior, that one who is one with the earth, right? And so, Tekpat, did you want to include anything? Add anything?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can, I guess, add to the mix, right, is um things are cyclical, right? There aren't rough starts and stops, right, along the way. It's more of constantly in motion, right? Like Olin, right? The movement. And so things are cyclical. Um, the whole moving with a purpose, just like in the previous slides that we talked about, right, is it's important to attain, well, to reflect, establish, and maintain goals, right? To understand what it is you're trying to work towards. We can become very defeated or unmotivated when we lose sight of what we're here for. We're not just here by coincidence. A lot of people just say, well, I'm just here on earth because, well, my parents got together and I, came into the picture. That may be true, right? But every individual, every spirit within people, right? They have a purpose. They have a reason behind their existence. They are all interconnected within the energies and nature. It's just about getting to become knowledgeable of who you are, being informed of who you are and what it is that you're meant to do, right? Uh, we have to consider, what it is we're here for. We're not just here to mess around, just waste time, right? Be tactful with how we use our time. And yes, it is important, like Atlani mentioned, right, to take time to yourself, to maintain that balance, to relax, to sleep or rest, right, when your body is asking for those things, or when you just need to separate yourself for a little bit and read or go garden or go do something that you enjoy, right, to maintain those interests and to reestablish that balance within yourself. All those things are important to do as we continue on, right, in growing and improving ourselves. We need to know ourselves, right? We need to know ourselves well so that we can develop those areas, right, to flourish in all those areas or walks of life. We need to know who we are, what we're doing, what parts of us, need attention and how much, right, to balance those things out. And then, yeah, I mean, the universe, I think we all are very familiar that it's vast, right? It's huge. It's grand. And so there's plenty, right, for everybody. We don't have to be selfish and just keep it to ourselves. The whole purpose is to work together, right? Learn how to establish connections with other people, and network and connect with others, right? To strengthen those bonds. And so, whether Atlani?
I don't think that I can really add much more to that. I think that you guys hit it right on point. If you guys would like to, we can go ahead and move on to the next one.
Go ahead, brother.
So the homework is essentially going to be to create a family tree, right? And you don't have to uh, dig extremely deep, but you want to make it as big as you can, right? With your grandparents, great grandparents, siblings. You want to make it as full as you can, right? Um Forming a family, elbow to elbow, arm to arm, no one ahead, no one behind. That is basically one of the things that we are using and working with as part of being in a Kalpuli, right? Nobody is gonna stay behind in a Kalpuli. Everybody's gonna learn together. Everybody's gonna basically lock arm to arm, and if one person tries to fall because it's too weak, the rest of us are gonna keep him afloat, standing, right? That is basically the sense of community, the structure of community that was created by the elders, by the ancestors, in a Calpuli, in a barrio. Nobody was left behind. The entire, if somebody was sick because whatever happened to them, if they had an accident and they couldn't work, the entire community was there to make sure that they didn't go hungry, the things kept on being done, their chores were, done. That's the take you. That's the way that communities live for centuries in the Anawak. The next are going to be numbers: Chikwase, Chikome, Chikwe, Chignawi. That's essentially the spiritual portion, the intangible portion of the numbers. First, we've seen the first four numbers, which essentially are going to be teaching us more about the body. These numbers are going to be teaching us more about the spiritual aspect of life, right? The intangible aspect, the Nahualic aspect. Tosepan wan toselti tipatlaniski. Together and alone we will fly. We can fly together. In a lot of the exercises that can be done, they can be done as groups. We can meet in Mictlampa. We can talk in Mictlampa. We can do exercises together. You can basically go and do a ceremony with a lot of your siblings and raise your spirit, right? Raise your vibration. Um, but you can also do it alone. You can also go and do a small ceremony by yourself with grandfather fire. You can also go and meditate near water. You can also talk to the wind, right? Uh, you can do all of these different things that will basically raise your frequency, raise your vibration to the point that you can truly fly, right? That you can truly become so light that you can start living different experiences that most people don't get to live in the regular day-to-day life. No, anything?
So just to elaborate, so the numbers, right? Chikwase, Chikome, Chikwei, and Chiknawi, that translates to 6, 7, 8, and 9. Sorry, I wanted to make sure. Yes. So those translate to 6, 7, 8, and 9. And so yes, as Brother Atlani has mentioned, that concept is more to start deciphering, right, that spiritual side. And then yeah, just to remind those that it's important to put these things into practice, these exercises, these lessons. And when doing so, especially with the family tree, be kind to yourself, right? Don't get discouraged. As Brother Atlani eloquently mentioned, right? Just go as far as you can. There is nothing wrong with how expansive or how detailed you go. It's just putting that into practice. And then maybe along the way, finding more information to eventually add to the tree, right? But a lot of people start to realize that paper erasure is a thing. It does impact our lives, but it's not meant to hinder our progress or stop us from moving forward, right? It's just coming to terms with there might be a limit to how far at this point in time that you can go, right? But keep at it, right? Keep that motivation to do the tree. Because you'll learn a lot, right? From your siblings, your grandparents, your aunts, uncles. And you're starting to create that foundation, right, for future generations to build upon. The purpose is to have something solid, concrete, started, right, so that it can be built upon, learned from, things can be done with it, right? And so along the way, you'll add more information as time passes. You'll get more knowledgeable about certain things, maybe certain histories and information. But it's just the point is to always keep at it, right? Keep growing, keep learning. And then, yeah, I mean, it was all really well explained. We're not meant to leave anybody behind, right? In a Kalpoli, we're learning alongside each one of you. We don't know all the information, right? We ourselves are students. Yes, we are presenting the information and we are spreading the information to others, right? Passing it along. But along the way, we're also building on the information and the knowledge that we are trying to achieve because we don't have all the answers, right? And the purpose is to always be growing, always be learning something, right, each day. And so, Nemo?
And that concludes the lesson for today. The funny thing is that the Mastiani did this in 30 minutes. So I need to figure out a way to shorten my explanations. But regardless, we got through it. It's essentially we end this and we start asking, are there any questions throughout, this lesson that we have for today? If not, it's okay. So yes, go ahead.
I'm not exactly too clear on the number and how to use the numbers. If you could elaborate on how to work with that.
So for right now, we just wanted to present the numbers that are associated with the spiritual side of the education. Eventually, we are going to dive into the meaning behind each of the numbers. They do have meanings behind them. And so it's okay right now to not be clear on them. We were just presenting right now the range of numbers that work with that spiritual aspect.
Okay.
And when it comes to the numbers is a really cool concept, Noinitsin Andy, because the numbers in Nahuatl had a way more profound meaning than it does in either Spanish or English. Let's take the number 9, for example, right? The number 9 it represents basically the Nahual. That's the reason why from the number 5 to the number 9, you have this spiritual aspect to them. They have more of a representation to the spirituality than it does to the real life, kind of like the body, kind of like, for example, the number 4 would, right, with the 4 different extremities of the body. Or the number 2 would with the duality, right? More of a physical thing than a spiritual thing. So those are aspects that we're gonna try to do a class. And this class is gonna cover all of the numbers. That class it's in Spanish. We have to translate it. Once we translate it, I think that it's going to have to be broken down into 2 different sections because otherwise it would be too long in English. But we'll go ahead and work on that. But that'll be most likely after we go through the 20 tonals. But everything basically comes together, right? Like, for example, the tonals that we're learning about right now, right? You mentioned that somebody in Mexico did read your birth chart, your tonali, and gave you some answers as far as what your day was. We're actually going to be learning that ourselves. We're going to go into learning the actual way to be able to tell the energy. There's multiple different classes that we're going to be taking. The problem is, like Noinitzin Nemo said, is we're also students, right? So we're having to take a lot of these classes ourselves. But at the same time, we're trying to also kind of juggle with our time, with our schedules, and be able to start to put this information out as we learn it or as we have learned it, and go back to remind ourselves about the different lessons. But we will be covering the numbers as well.
Okay, I look forward to that.
Any other questions that you can think of? No, anything?
Not right now. Right now I'm just thinking about, actually I'm thinking about acquiring some wood. Hopefully this weekend. I'm not sure, it's going to be a short weekend, but I want to get some wood to make an offering to Grandfather Fire. So
You know, with working with the fire is one of those things that I think if you noticed, a lot of people love those being around the fire. I think it's in our DNA. I
yeah.
think anytime that I make a fire myself, you know, it puts me in a particular mood. I enjoy it a lot.
Oh yeah, same here. I've always had a fascination with fire since I was a little kid. I used to play with it actually. I got in trouble, but I used to
We
play
all
with it.
did.
Yeah. And then I didn't truly connect to it spiritually until I went to a ceremony, and it was a peyote ceremony with a maracame. And yeah, it was a very profound experience because, I always heard that the fire talks back to you, and I always wondered, like, I wonder how that works. And, well, I got to experience it, and it was very profound. And ever since then, I've just felt a very strong connection to the fire.
Yeah, I've been to some ceremonies where you know, you feel like the fire is speaking to you. So it's a beautiful thing. We need to do a ceremony in the Calpulli one of these days, and those experiences are extremely beautiful.
Oh, that would be great. Definitely. Do you live here in California, or where do you live?
I live in Colorado, no,
Colorado?
it's in Andy, right? But I travel. I'm actually going to be in California next week.
Oh,
I plan on taking a road trip and visiting about 4 different national parks. I want to go meditate in the Redwood National Park. So I'll
oh,
be
that's
doing
beautiful.
that. I'll hopefully I'll do some meditation in the Death Valley National Park also.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, I'll be traveling a little bit.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, enjoy yourself on your travels and be safe.
Yeah, when you mentioned that you were in the desert, I was like, I'll be there. I won't be running a 7K like no Noinitzin Nemo, but I'm pretty sure I'll be sweating anyway.
Yeah, you will be, especially if you come because I live in a very rural town. It's a farming area, and it's by the Mexicali border. So if you're around that area, you're definitely gonna Definitely gonna feel the change in temperature down here.
Yeah, yeah. No anything, Nemo? No anything, Tecpat?
Great lesson, everybody. I mean, I really enjoyed the teachings behind this class, just because it does us a lot of good, right? Putting these things into practice of like letting go and detaching things that we need to make more routine, right, in our day to day. And so I too also have a connection, or what is it? Affinity towards fire. I get very mesmerized. I like watching the flames dance, right? The movement of fire. Um, I like that connection, right? That both of you were mentioning, of just being around fire. I don't know. It's like it does communicate, and it does. You can feel, right, the energy present. You can feel like the embrace from the energy, kind of bringing you in, uh, reminding you that it's there. It's giving you like that hug, right? And so I do hope you're able to get some wood and have a fire. And if possible, right, you can try to practice one of those exercises that we mentioned previously, right, about writing some things you want to let go of, right, on a piece of paper and offering it to the fire, and truly letting go, right, from that moment on, and just remove some of those burdens that we like to, for some reason, torture ourselves by holding on to and carrying and weighing ourselves down. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely do that. And later on, I'll show you guys a picture I took at one of the ceremonies I went to. I took a picture of the fire, and you can clearly see the side profile of a bird. I honestly think it's a raven, because the raven kept appearing on my way to the ceremony. Yeah, so I'll show you guys the picture later.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah, nice.
All right, then, I'm gonna go ahead and drop off. I have some